The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine.
You know, when I have a large project at home, sometimes it makes sense to do it by myself. At other times, I actually save money in the long term and have a much better solution if I use an expert. It's really not that much different with church planting. Church planters who focus on building their core team and actually planting the church and partner with portability experts like Portable Church Industries hit the ground running. Yes, you may have to raise more funds up front, but let me tell you something. If I could go back in a time machine and do one thing different in all the churches that I planted, I would go back and have invested that money in Portable Church and all of the super cool kit that they give you to make the volunteers and their lives much, much easier. Trust me, your volunteers will feel invested in, and they're going to give you more of what they got. And that time where people are setting up is going to be a time where it sets the atmosphere for you to thrive. If you're thinking about launching in the next 6 to 36 months, we encourage you to check them out at portablechurch.com.
Hey, this is Lance Ford, and you're listening to Hardcore Church Planting with the two greatest metrosexual hosts in church planting world that you'll ever meet.
Well, this may not be hardcore church planting, but it's still the two greatest metrosexual hosts in all the world. I'm your host, Pete Mitchell.
Yep, the wearer of skinny jeans. And I am Peyton Jones, a sporter of the infamous faux hawk.
I don't know how you would look with the faux hawk. I
don't know, but wouldn't that like where the whole metrosexual, and like moisturizer for men's skin?
I would have loved to have seen you when you had long hair.
I show you a picture.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
Yeah, you like see me now? Like Tommy Wiseau?
I can tell you're going through it right now because your whole head is just furry. It's like you gave up on the razor for Lent and you're taking the next 40 days off.
Dude, absolutely. I have full grown chia head right now.
You do. You've got that's a great term
chia
for
pet.
It. You got chia head right now. I can just tell, man. I'm like,
it needs a trim.
Oh, dude, I feel like I should run down to Target and go buy you like a Gillette or something and just like take it to you. Go, here you go, bro, man. I know things are rough. Here you go.
I have to train the next 3 days, and I can't go in there looking like Chaka. You know?
Oh, so it's getting cut.
Oh yeah, it's either that or go in there, knuckling on the ground and saying Ungani. Trying to mess with weather pylons. Can't do that.
Yeah. So, welcome everyone to the Church Planter Podcast. And this is a little something that we like to call Smack Talk.
Chocolate.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. Now that it's that part of the show where we talk smack, what you gonna do when the Church Planter Podcast runs wild on you?
Now, we do a little thing called Smack Talk, and then we get into our topic. Peyton, what is our topic today?
Our topic today is friendlessness and isolation in ministry, the danger of being alone if you let yourself be.
Are you saying you need a friend? Does somebody need a hug?
Who needs a hug?
Somebody needs a hug.
Hey, even Chaka had friends. I mean, they weren't very nice cave people, but eventually he found, Marshall, Will, and Holly, and things started looking up for Chaka. Chaka learned to talk. Only primitive, guttural utterings like Chaka-like, Chaka-no. He wasn't super, expressive, but he got across what he wanted. Everybody needs friends, even Chaka.
Well, I do have a really, I think it's going to be a cool announcement. I'm a little bit jumping the gun here, but we are going to start transcribing our podcasts.
Woohoo! So we have show notes finally? The whole thing?
I'm not doing show notes. Come on, man. What are you talking about?
We don't do show notes.
Look, here's my show note to you. Go to bivowebinar.com. That's all we put in the show notes.
Here's what show notes are, everybody. If you're kind of wondering like why we don't have show notes, this is what show notes are. Yeah, they're trendy. Yeah, everybody has them. But this is what a show note is. It's a way of saying, hey, you should listen to our podcast because we have these goodies in here. And at this minute, this is what you'll find. And if you scrub ahead to this minute, you know what? You either want to listen to our podcast or you don't, right? So it's kind of like if you got to read the whole show notes to figure out if you want to listen to our podcast, just move along, folks.
That's all I'm saying.
Just move along.
That's all I'm saying. To me, honestly, it just sounds like work because I know you're not doing the show notes.
Oh, no. Heck no. Hey, but I did start giving Travis titles for hardcore.
Well, that was awfully nice of you.
Well, he started to put things like Peyton interviews with, and there was one that he did that was like, gosh, what was it? It was like, it almost looked like, you know, a Chinese gold farmer from a video game had written the description, you know? And I had to say, hey man, that one's wrong, but can we like, you know, maybe come up with like real titles, like, what did we talk about? You know, not just Peyton Talks with Bob.
But that's all I used to do.
Yeah. I think that's where he inherited it from.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it is. Because, see, there's actually a marketing reason to do that. Because all I was doing was tying the names together. Oh, look, Peyton Jones interviewed Francis Chan.
But it's like see Dick, see Jane. But every once in a while, you got to go the extra mile and say, see Dick and Jane, run.
Hey, what about last week's Church Planter podcast? What did I put the title? Get Motivated. That's it. That's all I called it. I'm like, it's the Get Motivated tour.
It kind of was.
I know it's a little TM. I know that's trademarked by the Get Motivated tour, but
see, I don't even know that, and I don't think they even care.
Well, I guarantee you, if they saw it, they would tell us to take it down.
They really?
Oh yeah.
See, now you just put a powerful weapon into the hands of our enemies, Pete.
Well, you know, I like to do that kind of thing every once in a while.
Living on the edge.
Actually, I've been begging for someone to tell me to take everything down. They just haven't come along.
Really funny. So, I got a virtual assistant, and he's rad, right? So he's pretty funny. But I laughed so hard yesterday. He sent an email to somebody. And it was, what he meant to say was, hi, my name is Coleman. And instead he wrote, Coleman, name is Coleman. And then he writes this response back later and goes, hi, what I meant to say was, my name is Coleman. I promise, I'm not a caveman. I know how to talk. Coleman, name is Coleman. Oh, I was laughing so, it wasn't, I mean, I remember seeing the first email going, what? And then I saw the second one. I was laughing so hard I was crying, man.
That's funny.
I promise I'm not a caveman.
That's funny. So are you going to share what our long lost friend from the UK texted this morning?
Yes. No, I think should I share it? Or
I'm not going to share it because I went and saw Thor, and Thor was fantastic. And it was just like I said, it's Barry. That's it. You just can't, it's Barry.
Let's just say we might have gotten some hate mail from Barry after, Pete was saying, I'm going to go see Ragnarok anyways because it looks good. And, it's only Barry. I mean, Barry hated it. And, so anyways, we might have said some sharp, barbed things last week. And here's the letter that we received in response. Dear hosts of the Church Planter podcast, I am writing in response to the disparaging remarks made about me on this week's podcast. I was shocked and appalled to hear that my flawless taste in movies was called into question. How dare you? My opinions on movies are unquestionably accurate. That said, Thor Ragnarok isn't a bad movie. I just really dislike the comedic portrayal of these characters I have been a fan of since childhood. If you're not a big-time Marvel comic and movie fan, you will most likely enjoy this movie as it is loud, bright, and funny. I hope this clarification proves that my views on movies are without reproach. I would also appreciate if this error on your parts would be rectified on next week's show. Regards, Barry Waters. P.S. Deckard is a replicant.
Yeah. I was laughing so hard at the PS. And that's when I knew Barry has no taste in movies.
Barry, I'm pulling for you, buddy. You had me at Deckard as a replicant, which was the PS. So you didn't have me until then, but completely changed my view when I read the PS message, brother. I'm with you.
Have you seen Thor yet?
No.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I'm thinking about taking Luke to it.
Yeah, you should take me to it.
You live too far away.
I know, but
since you're not even living in your house, I think you should just move up here. That's all I'm saying.
I know. Hey, you know what? When I go to the movies, this is funny. Pete and I, when we went and saw Blade Runner, I have to go to the bathroom. I come back. Pete's at the snack counter, and he's got this little thing of popcorn. And
it was a medium. I upgraded to a medium because you said you wanted popcorn
to share.
Normally I get a small.
but it's all kinds of wrong. Like, here's the thing. Like, Pete and I
got a box so you can pour.
We didn't even talk about it. We just, there's the dude rule. When you go to the movies with a dude, there's the empty seat between you. You can't sit right next to the dude. You got to observe the dude rule. But what Pete was going to do was stick this medium-sized popcorn in the seat right in between us.
I had a box so you could dump your popcorn in the box.
What if our hands touch?
No, that's why you have the box. One person has the bag, the other person has the box.
Why can you say that, man? No, I'm teasing, but I came up here's the truth though. I ended up buying my own, and here's the reason. I go to the movies with my family, and I am a sucker for the large Coke, and I mean that big, large one, right? That's the only time I ever get that, and I rarely ever drink a soft drink.
It wasn't like I got a soda with 2 straws and said, "Here, let's share."
Kind of felt that way though. I'm just saying. And then, but I get the big jumbo, like the biggest one they have. And here's the weird thing. I may only be little, but I will decimate that bucket of popcorn single-handedly.
It's true.
And usually, I did. And usually I'll go back for a refill. I'll have to pee at least twice during that movie with that giant Coke. But I'll get the box and I'll give some to my kids, and then I'll eat the rest. And my wife's like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know where it goes. But, man, I am a sucker for popcorn.
The Church Planner Podcast isn't the podcast that planners deserve, but the podcast they need.
You can definitely say it's not the one they deserve.
I kind of felt like that was appropriate.
We think well of you, Church Planner, and welcome to the Church Planner Podcast. If you're thinking we're one of those Church Planner podcasts, we just make some unfunny banter, just to make you think we're wild and crazy guys. Yeah, we're not that podcast.
No, we could tell you who those podcasts are.
No, we just here's the deal. Like we say, this part's for us. We're gonna serve you in a minute. Just hold on.
Yeah, so this is transitioning into a serious topic.
Oh.
No, I just the Texas shooting thing, man. What do you think, man? What are your thoughts?
Well,
do we know much at this point?
Yeah. They found out it's a family feud. And a couple guys pursued the shooter, so he was wounded when he shot himself, and he texted his dad and said, "Hey, I'm not going to make it." And then he just did himself in. He apparently knew he was pretty jacked up. So yeah.
So I didn't even, wow, he killed himself there at the end.
Yeah, he killed himself. Apparently, now it may be that the cops came and assumed he had killed himself once he was shot. But remember, there were those couple guys that pulled out firearms and started shooting. It is Texas after all, right?
Yeah, I read one story, and it was like a guy across the street, and his daughter was like, "Hey, there's someone shooting at the church."
Right.
And he went and grabbed his gun, and I guess he's an instructor for the NRA. Which,
are you serious?
Yeah. Wow. Which kind of like,
it's
Texas.
It was tragic, man. All these things, I guess the major thing that really disappointed me, and I say this every time, is where it immediately goes to politicization, where we immediately politicize it. And, people start arguing. And I just think it's one of the things that makes America one of the most idiotic countries on the planet. We just don't know when to shut up. You know, the Bible says mourn with those who mourn. There's just a time to shut your mouth. You know, best part of Job is when his friends just sit down quiet for 3 days and just hurt with him. And if we could ever learn that, to just sit down, shut up, and mourn.
Kind of reminds me of a movie we both recently saw called Wind River, where a guy sits underneath the swing set with his buddy and just, you know, sits there and he's, I don't got anywhere to go. I'm just going to sit here with you.
Well, that's kind of it, right? Like this ties into our topic amazingly today, is sometimes people don't need you to give them a pep talk. People just need to know that they're not alone. And I think a lot of times when people are deeply hurting, there is an isolation and the sense of loneliness that creeps in. And really all that was happening in that movie is a guy sat down next to him to say, I'm here. I'm with you. Right? I don't got to have any answers. I don't got to fix you. That's not what friendship is. Friendship is making sure that when people are going through it, they're not alone. That's it.
What's that stuff on your face? It's my death mask. How do you know what that looks like? Such a great movie.
Yeah.
It really was good. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just, I think it was, I was like, wow, man, it's happening at a church this time.
Yeah.
So then, you know, I was seeing all over Facebook people going, well, you know, we're going to have to start arming at the church. And I'm like, I don't know. That's just, I get it. What I thought was really interesting was, who's the church planner in Stanton? Paul, what's his name? Paul Percy. Yeah. Right? He was funny. He was like, because of where our church is, we've always had people armed in our church.
Yep.
I was like,
typical of a new breed church plant right there.
I was like, welcome to Stanton, baby.
Like Refuge Long Beach, man. You never know what's going on in that church. Man.
Yeah, but I don't know if we ever had anyone armed. I mean, that was on our side, armed at Refuge Long Beach.
That's a good point.
I guarantee you there were armed people
in the church, but there were definitely armed people there.
There were 100%. That was not a weapon-free church ever. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was like, wow, man, that's, I mean, I part of me was kind of like, I mean, have there been a lot of things in the U.S. at churches with guns? Cause I was like, I thought this was kind of like,
unfortunately, I mean, there was that one a few years ago where.
What was the one a few years ago?
Well, the one where the guy went into the African American church and it was racially.
Right. Yeah. I was reading another comment from another guy. We've actually had him as a guest on the show. He's a guy I respect. And he was like, look, you know what? I can't believe that our society has come to this. He goes, but there's over 300 million legally owned firearms in the United States.
Right.
He goes, gun control is just, it's a joke at this point. If you're in a state where you can legally arm yourself, you're just going to have to start doing that. Like just to protect your family. He's like, that's just the world that we live in. You can't, I mean, gun control isn't going to work in a country where there's almost as many guns as there are people.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, and it's unfortunately kind of true.
Yeah. Yeah, really. I mean, and this is where the church has an opportunity to shine. This is where people can start reaching out. Churches could reach out and say, hey, we're going to pay for the funeral expenses. We're going to pay for the damage. The body of Christ has an amazing opportunity during situations like this. Instead, we jump in, you know, monkey see, monkey do, and we jump in as Christians rather than going, hey guys, why don't we give towards these people? You know, why don't we boom, boom, boom. The reason I mention this is because I know of an organization that asked for it to be confidential, but a Christian organization that volunteered and said, hey, we are going to come forward privately and we are going to pay for all 28 funerals.
Oh, wow.
Expenses. Yeah. So pretty cool. And it hadn't occurred to me till I heard that. But I think that that's what you can do. I mean, it's a teeny community.
Yeah.
These people are poor. They don't have a ton of money. Imagine what that does to that church. A church that loses 28 people and goes through that tragedy.
People aren't even going to want to come back, like the survivors.
Right.
Because it's going to be so painful. I mean, not even like the fear element, but it's going to be the pain.
It's the memories.
Yeah.
It's the memories when you walk through that door. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens. The strength that the pastor, there's been a lot of focus on the pastor who lost his 14-year-old daughter there. And it'll be really interesting to see, what unfolds from this.
Yeah.
How they move forward as a community, how he moves forward as, gosh, at this point, he's exuded an amazing amount of strength. But it'd be interesting to see how he moves forward, if he's able to carry on and he's a dad. That's how can you?
I don't even know. Whenever I hear anything like that, and here's the thing, when I didn't have kids, I couldn't relate to this.
No.
And I knew I couldn't relate. And, people would talk about anything that had to do with kids. I'm like, I can't relate. I don't have kids. And then, once you have kids, all of a sudden, all of that stuff makes sense. In fact, in some respects, a lot more of the Bible makes sense when you have kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the whole, father-son relationship, at least for me as a dude, I understand it better. I understand that connection. When God refers to us as his adopted children, I get it better because I have kids.
It's so funny you're saying this. Last night I put my kids down and we use this app right now called Superbook to go through the Bible. And it's got little videos and they're really well done. And last night we were on the third one because they're like an hour long. So like it takes us multiple nights. We'll do about maybe 10, 15 minutes and I'll just say, hey, what'd you guys learn from that? Well, last night was the beginning of Jacob and Esau. And that's my kids right now. Like literally right as so we have this thing where the kids are in the same room right now and there's two little single beds. Did you hit a button?
No, I dropped something. Never mind. Nothing to see here. Move along. And so what happened was these two little beds are in there and they're always like, Daddy, sit in my bed. Let's read in my bed. And so we started this new thing where the first person to brush their teeth and get in their bed, it's your bed that we read in. So last night, my youngest was the first one in her bed because she was the quickest to listen about brushing her teeth. So my oldest one was, hey, Dad, do you love Eden more than me? And like we hadn't even gotten to the Jacob and Esau story. Did you finally admit it?
It was funny because after the whole thing, like she was still mopey and she was trying to pull herself out of it. She was a little hurt. We were in her bed. And so I go over there and I jokingly say, well, you're my favorite. Then we, and we gave a little bit. And then my other daughter, my 4-year-old, was like, stop it. Daddy, what you say? What happened, Daddy? I was like, there's no way to win this because now I'm trying to comfort the other one by she totally knows I'm joking. But, it was so relevant. It was literally my kids last night. And we get in there and I'm like, this is prophetic to my kids right now,
Interesting.
Yeah. It does make a lot more sense, man. Well, Speaking of my kids.
Oh, yeah.
Star Wars. Watch episode 3 the other night.
3?
Yeah, you kind of have a recollection of it because even by your own admission, it kind of halfway qualifies for the original trilogy to be somewhat worthy. Even halfway.
That's you.
No, I all the way love that movie. I full out love episode 3.
Go on.
What was that? What was that? Was that me? Go on. Who was that?
That was me. I just did it.
Oh, that was funny. That sounded like a soundbite. So anyways, we're watching episode 3 and it was so funny because Liberty sees Mace Windu and he's all mad and he's getting ready to take the emperor. And she goes, "That Jedi's a black daddy," which was rad. It's like the best comment out of my daughter, and she's black, so it was rad, That Jedi's a black daddy.
That's so funny.
What's that?
I said that's so funny.
Then the Emperor and Mace Windu are fighting, and the Emperor. It's funny because my youngest daughter is not into Star Wars at all, but she'll kind of tolerate. She's kind of curious about it now, and I think I told you that on Halloween I put the mask on and she flipped out. She'd been telling everybody how Daddy was an evil villain.
I think you referred to her as a hobgoblin. I remember.
Did I really?
No.
I've called her an Ugnaught before. You know that, right? Like when she was little, she kind of looked like an Ugnaught. She did.
I just remember the hobgoblin story to me will go down as one of the greatest stories ever.
And she scared me.
Yeah.
And I thought she was a hobgoblin for a split.
And you called her a hobgoblin.
Yeah. My brain was playing tricks on me that night. Too much coffee.
Hobgoblin.
I thought you were a hobgoblin. But, it's funny because she looks at me, and she holds her hands up. You can see me, Pete. She holds her hands up like she's holding up the like when you show someone the number 10. She puts her hands right in my face, and with shock and awe, she goes, "Oh, Daddy, I did not know he had magic in his hands." She was so blown away by the Emperor shooting lightning out of his hands. And we just started busting up. She was whispering like she had just discovered some secret.
So you were watching Return of the Jedi?
No, we were watching episode 3 where he's shocking Mace Windu, and Mace Windu's catching it in his lightsaber.
Who's Mace Windu? I don't know who that is.
Yeah. Mace Windu was the original character. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, gosh. No, it's canon. It's canon.
No, when Lucas, who was like kind of like the god, the creator.
Stop.
He originally wrote about a character called Mace Windu. That's where that character came from. Then he switched it. No. I'm just saying your son's name could have been Mace.
I'm just saying
that would have been pretty cool.
I'm just saying you have no idea. You take whatever little nugget someone drops out there, and if you like it, that becomes your little nugget. You're like,
that was his original story.
Look at this! Look at this little sapling over here. I like this sapling. This sapling's now my sapling.
Even if you repeat ignorance and say it with a bit of feeling, it's still ignorance.
I know. I really wish you would learn that. We should actually get into our subject. Doc, can you kick us off?
Where's your Smack Talk? It never came out.
No, I just I don't think I should go to my Smack Talk. I really don't.
You did say, "Hey, I have a lot of things, but I don't think I should say them. But I'm going to until you stop me."
Well, I think this is what we're going to refer to as a self-edit. I'm going to self-edit. So
those are rare.
They are.
Indeed.
Great Scott! It's time for this week's topic.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, I think you got a little something from Regal?
I do. Yes. I have to talk about the fact that if you're a church planner, you actually need to get in touch with Regal Cinemas. It's what they call theater church. And Regal Cinemas has employed 4 church planners to help you meet in the busiest place, probably one of the major hubs in your city, in a time where they don't get a lot of traffic. But right after your church meets, they do. It's kind of like when your church is getting out, the day is beginning. People are starting to pour into the movies. So if you're thinking that your only place to meet is a school or maybe a community center, then you need to get in touch with Regal Cinemas, the theater church branch, and chat with them about competitive pricing for getting into a public space and leveraging that to reach more people. Where you can go for that is www.corporateboxoffice.com/theater-church. Come on, cheapo.
By the way, I love the word sheeple. I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah, didn't you say it to me last week? And I was like, I have not heard that.
I don't remember.
Years.
I like texted it, or it was in an email, or
you sent something that said "Wake up, sheeple."
That's right, I did, didn't I? What did I send?
You sent me something, and it was I think it was something to do with wasn't it something to do with the flat Earth again?
Oh, that's what it was. It was the flat Earth. You got me reading about flat Earth. I've now subscribed to the Facebook pages for flat Earth.
You did not.
Oh yeah, you got me looking at the moon as a space station or a spaceship. I'm reading all the theories on that. I'm like, it's true. It's true. The moon is a spaceship. There's aliens out there. And that's why somebody put together a great video or something that was like proof of a flat Earth, and I'm like, wake up, sheeple.
Oh my gosh, it is so funny, man, to just, when people are like, when people are like, oh man, I can't believe in the gospel. It's like, aliens, you already believe in something that you can't prove. You just know in your heart that it's true, It's funny.
I thought the evidence for the moon being hollow was really compelling.
I haven't read that.
Oh, it's pretty compelling. I'm like, oh, NASA did these tests. I believe in NASA. NASA, I trust. I can make the leap from NASA to that. So
interesting.
I'm just saying.
I haven't really delved into these theories. I just think they're funny. I've surface skimmed them on YouTube, and I just find them entertaining.
That's about all you need to do to get the whole gist of it.
Yeah. It's not like, I told you about Steve-O, right?
No.
What? There was an interview with Steve-O. And in the YouTube heading,
like Jackass
Steve-O dismisses. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The guy from Jackass.
Okay.
He goes, Steve-O dismisses flat Earth theory in 2 minutes. And so, it's Steve-O, right? He's like, oh, bro, he's on like the Seth Rogen show. He's like, oh, bro, they took me up in this jet, and they're interviewing him. And he's like, oh, how high did you go? I don't know, man. I don't remember anything. Because, I'm not going to say why, but Steve-O doesn't remember a lot. Let's just put it that way. And anyways, it's got film footage, and on the film footage, it's showing the horizon as being, a sphere. And he goes, bro, I'm just saying, Earth is not flat. I went up there. I saw it. Look at my footage. And the guy goes, well, seeing is believing, and it was funny, man. Cause he's like, the horizon's not flat when you're up that high, dude. I'm just saying.
That's so funny.
So funny, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we should actually get into our topic. I wanted to. I had a sound effect ready to go and everything, and it didn't play, and it was a good one too.
What was it?
I made my money the old-fashioned way. I got run over by a Lexus.
Hey, that's always the best way. By the way, church planners, that's why we don't talk about fundraising on this podcast. Just get run over by a Lexus.
Could you, shut up and give us some money?
That's right. It's the Beavis and his unmentionable friend philosophy of church planting.
All right. So because we have to actually get into our subject.
I used to have more friends before I got into church planting.
All right. Now that's an appropriate introduction.
Well played, Pete Mitchell. Well played. It's interesting because friendlessness is kind of an issue. Isolation is an issue. Imagine for a second that you're Jesus. And I'm not being funny in saying that. Imagine, that sometimes when you're called to something, you really don't have, or you don't feel like you have a lot of people to talk to. I mean, how does Jesus, get the comfort he needs? He's getting ready to go to the cross, and he keeps telling him, look, I'm going to be crucified. I'm going to suffer at the hands of the Romans and the Jews, and I'm going to be crucified. But on the third day, I'm going to rise again. And Peter takes him aside and goes, no, it's never going to happen to you, Lord. And it's like, he's looking for like, you can just hear it in his voice. Like he's saying, look, this is what's going to happen, just trying to prep you guys. He's trying to brief them. And then on the night that he's betrayed, he's lonely, and he tells his guys, hey, I'm sorrowing unto death. Like I feel like It's really interesting what happens in the shadow of the cross, because when he sweats the drops of blood, his anxiety, he alone knows what he's about to face. And his anxiety is so great that his capillaries have burst. And I'm trying to remember the medical term when you sweat, when you bleed out your sweat glands.
Yeah, I actually just read that in the Case for Christ, and I can't remember what it's called either.
Yeah, I think it's called hemoptysis. So I think, but I'm going off memory. But medical stuff is rusty for me now. But he says, I'm sorrowful unto death. And then when he sweats, says his sweat was like drops of blood. Some people say, oh, it's just really big drops. He was sweating profusely. Other people say, no,
there's a condition. There's a condition that
there's a condition. Yeah. Where it looks like you're sweating blood because your blood pressure is so high that it actually starts to burst the capillaries. Well, you can imagine Jesus being aware of what's about to happen. It's not like he's just going to have a bad day. It's not like he's going to get fired from his job. It's not like, his wife's left him. He is about to suffer an eternity in hell in 6 hours, not just for one, but for the entire world. And as he's waiting for the wrath of God to come, he looks to those three guys and just says, will you just stay with me? Like, that's so touching and heartbreaking that Jesus at that moment, he just needed a friend, and, it's really interesting. Years ago, I saw a one-man play by Dean Jones. Remember the guy in the Herbie Goes Bananas and all the Herbie the Love Bug films from the 70s?
Kind of. I mean, I remember the movies, but I don't remember the actors.
Little Volkswagen Beetle. Well, the guy who owned Herbie was a guy named Dean Jones. I remember
the one where they called him Ocho. And the guy's like, why are you calling him Ocho? Ocho means 8. His number is 53. And he goes, well, because 5 + 3 = 8.
Well, it's funny because he was in Snowball Express. He's in The Cat from Outer Space. I mean, he was in tons of movies. Anyways, he was a believer, and he did a one-man play. If you can look this up on the internet, it's brilliant. It's total 80s, total like one-man monologue, guy on a stage at a church. It's about an hour long, but it is absolutely genius and brilliant. It's called St. John in Exile. And in that, he brings up, because it's him like having a conversation with you on Patmos. And he's having a conversation. He's just looking at the camera, just chatting. He's recounting things in the Gospels, and he's talking about, what it was like to know Jesus. But one of the things he says is when I saw Jesus, he goes, this is going to sound weird, and this is total like, he's putting this in there, but he goes, I just felt like that guy could use a friend. And the interesting thing about that is when you look at John's depiction of Jesus and the way he writes about Jesus as if Jesus were his best friend. When he talks about he was leaning his head, on his bosom, right. He was leaning his head he was leaning on him. Like, he was tight with Jesus. He loved Jesus. It was his best friend. And it's just really interesting, that John has this kind of fiery personality normally, but love becomes everything to him. And I just think somehow Jesus spoke to John through friendship. Like, for example, the foot race. He mentions that he and Peter get in a foot race. And he mentions that, they have a race. He mentions he was the first one there. Like, he just puts that little detail. I was the first one, by the way, and it's just really, really interesting stuff, but Jesus needed friends, and he was lonely. I mean, scripture tells us that he was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. There are so many Psalms where it says, my companions have fled from me. And in Matthew 26, it says all this has taken place to fulfill the scripture of the prophets, the betrayal, everything. And then it says, then all the disciples left him and fled. And Jesus in John 16 says, behold, an hour is coming and has already come for you to be scattered, each to his own home, and to leave me alone. And yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. And so, you get this sense that Jesus was lonely, and he was alone at times. And I just find it interesting, and so for church planners and ministers, you're in a position where everybody's coming to you with problems. Everybody's coming to you with their heartaches and their pain, and you got to switch off your life to a certain degree, and you focus on them. You focus on their hardships. You focus on what they're going through, and it can feel, and it can seem, and it can sometimes become reality that you really don't have anywhere to go. And that's okay sometimes. And if you're kind of a loner, like P.B. Herman says, I'm a loner, Dottie, a rebel, it's fine. But then there's times where it's not okay, and you really do need a friend. And if you haven't been building friendships, then when it matters most, like Pete was saying in that movie, when you need that friend to sit down next to you and just hurt with you, no one's around. And that isolation compounds the pain when you're down. It makes it probably 10 times harder when you're going through it, and then you feel like you have no one. It can really open up. The enemy can use that to open you up. If you think about the National Geographic, the predator is always looking to single the weak and sick one off from the herd. Why? So it can attack them with impunity. Because if they're in a herd, they will fight back. Animals will fight back in a herd if they're cornered. But if you can isolate one, there's no fight. The rest will flee. You isolate him, and he's easy prey. And it's the same when Peter says, and Peter knows this, right? Peter, I think, was isolated and taken down. And Jesus warns him. He says, Peter, you're going to deny me, but I've prayed for you that your faith would not fail, right? And so Peter in 1 Peter 5, he comes to this place where he says, your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Roaring lion is because the roar is meant to scatter and disorient and to separate. So the hope is that the herd will go, and the straggler will panic and go the wrong way, which is often how they get disoriented and isolated from the herd. And then the female lion just comes in and jumps on them, but the roar is a tactic. And so Satan often is roaring out all kinds of lies, all kinds of things in order to isolate. And Peter was the guy going, hey, look, I was that guy, that Satan took down. He isolated me. He took me down. And you can imagine Peter's isolation is, hey, I screwed up worse than anybody. I denied Jesus. The others fled, but I denied him and fled. Like, how wrong is that? And then, Jesus says, I pray for you that your faith may not fail. So somehow Peter says, he prowls around, but he says, remain steadfast in the faith. You can hear Jesus's words, his warning, echoing. He says, and after you have suffered a while, the Lord himself will restore you. And that's where Jesus, when he was really lonely, he had to first find his friendship in God. And even Paul has this in 2 Timothy 4:16. He says, at my first defense, no one supported me, but all deserted me. And then he says, but the Lord stood by my side. Interesting, huh?
It is. It is. I got no comment, by the way. I got nothing to contribute to this.
Well, I'm kind of going off on a monologue on this, right?
I think people are used to that.
Yes, sometimes they are. But it's really hard in ministry because we don't, we're often leading people. We're often mentoring people, even if you have other people in ministry, right? You might feel like, hey, I can't really share with this guy I'm mentoring because he looks to me and all that kind of stuff. And I would just say it's bull crap, right?
Well, yeah, no, I get it. It's tough. It would be tough. It would be tough to find as a pastor close friends in your church when that original relationship is one of, you look up to me, I'm the pastor, I'm here to dispense wisdom on you, drop it like it's hot. Sorry, I had a little Vanilla Ice moment.
Glad you pointed out what it was, because I missed that moment.
So I could see that being really tough. I think about
It's tough.
I think about the pastors in our Bivo group, which you can find all about at bivoinnercircle.com. And I know a bunch of them, like, they'll tell me, oh, you know what, this guy over here, he's my best friend. And I'm like, that's awesome. But I'm also thinking to myself, dude, he's like, 2,000 miles away from you.
Right.
It's not the same. Like, even you and I are close friends, but it's not like we can go hang because of how far apart we are.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that. I always make the joke. Sometimes you need someone with skin on. God's always there for you. Sometimes you need someone with skin on.
Yep.
And that's tough, man. That's really, really tough. Especially, I think one of the things that we've seen so much in the Bivo Inner Circle, like in the ministry Voxer, is when guys will bring up what's going on at home. And where can you go when you got issues at home? Like how many people in your church could you actually talk to about that? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, that's a tough one, because people like to gossip. Oh, did you hear what Pastor Pete's doing, and problems in his family, and oh my gosh. So, I mean, that's, I don't know, man, that's tough. That's a really tough road to be on. And, what are your suggestions? How do you,
so there's a couple ways to deal with this. Number one, and I've mentioned this before, to always make sure that you've got a counselor you can go to. It's not a friend.
Yeah, so I got to pay them to be my friend. Gotcha. Okay.
No, but you need someone that you can just talk to, who, for the family stuff, is an advocate for both of you. See, if I go to my friend and I talk to my friend about my marriage problems, my friend is my friend and is meant to be sympathetic. Now, a good friend will side with your wife too, will be an advocate for both of you. But to a certain degree, it's not right for you to be talking about your wife when she's not there. You shouldn't be doing that against your wife, guys, or her to her friends against you, because you're always going to come out the knucklehead in that. So the reality is, you need someone who is an advocate for both of you and is not going to, really take a side, but is there in support of your marriage. Now, your friends, you learn that quickly, who those friends are. I'm not saying you can't share with your friends, but if you don't pick up that your friend is an advocate of your marriage, is pulling for both of you, because if your friend truly loves you, your friend knows how devastating a divorce is, and is going to want to seek to help you have a strong marriage as much as he or she can. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, beyond that, you need to be talking and praying with your spouse. A lot of it is when you become disconnected with your spouse, that loneliness sets in. If you're not praying with your spouse, that loneliness sets in. And then beyond that, you need a circle of friends. Now, some of us, like you were saying, some pastors have friends that are close by, others don't. When I got back to California, one of my friends had moved away to Florida, and another one had recently died 3 months after I got back. And those I would have considered my two closest friends. And that was rough coming back, especially considering my closest friends for the past 12 years were on another continent when I got back. So the reality is, you and I started picking up our friendship pretty quick, but, like you said, you kind of need to see people face to face as well. And so one of the things that I did, and this might be something practical for pastors out there, is I joined a group of pastors that I could meet with on Monday mornings. They met at 7 a.m. on Mondays. They had a kind of like a circle. There was 4 to 6 of us on average. And we did these things called RPMs, which, it was kind of like, how you doing? And then you would talk. Relationship was the first letter, the R. P stood for physical. M stood for mental. And S stood for spiritual. And the only rule of that group was you couldn't lie, right? You couldn't faff about. You couldn't be fake with one another. You had to be honest about your relationship. I remember my first day there. This is kind of funny. The pastor that was hosting it, his name was Jared. He started sharing about his sex life, and I went right after him. So it was my first time. And I started to share about my sex life, and someone stopped me and said, no, it means relationship. Because I was turning like beet red, and I was kind of like hashing my words, like, trying to figure out how do I say how I'm doing. This is the rule of this group, but I don't know you guys, and I think I made that comment. And then one of the guys goes, no. And everyone starts laughing. You don't have to talk about sex. It just happens that he was talking about sex. And, so that still to this day is a joke among us. Peyton's, how's your sex life? And, so anyway, so it was relational, physical. The guys, they always, I've been, to the gym. It's been seven months since my last, confession, okay, do, my last workout. Okay, go do 24, sit-ups. And, it felt like that. Everyone was confessing about how bad they're eating. And then mentally, it was what books you were reading. And then spiritually, it was how's your walk with God? Just in that, guys would, one of the guys had lost his son, had died to cancer, his toddler, in the first year of his church plant. And that would come around, and he would just say, guys, I'm not right. I haven't felt right for about a month. Not doing okay. This time of year is hard for me. Roll around different times. And I mean, just, it was good. It was precious. And I would say maybe some of the guys listening, that would be a good thing to get involved with.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I know I don't want to hear about your sex life. So, it's a good thing you have that group.
But I want to tell you about it, Pete.
So bad. Yeah. I almost think I think it's tough for pastors because of the whole, like you've shared that with me, that it's tough to have friends who will be real friends because of your role as a pastor. And, that was always one of the things that you've mentioned that worked well between the two of us. And I relate it to the fact that I grew up with a pastor as a dad, man. I've seen behind the curtain. I know how you guys are not as good as everyone thinks you are just because you're a pastor. And I don't even know what to say, man. I guess that's tough. I don't really know. For me, it's tough on the whole friend side, just because I'm such a loner. Like, I'm totally a loner. That's not like one of the things that I strive for are friends. And I think part of that is because, just how I'm wired, how I'm built. But, and now that I have a family, I am such a loner. I need downtime away from the family. And not like, oh, I got to get away from them. But like Sundays are my precious day, right? Sunday we go to church, and then Jamie goes with her mom and the kids, and they go shopping all afternoon. And I love Sundays because that means the rest of the day, Petey gets to do what Petey wants to do, like go see Thor and tell Barry how wrong he is about, how his take on Thor. And it's like, but I'm a loner like that. Like, I'm totally a loner like that. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of that's temperamental. The Bible has a lot to say about this kind of stuff. And I think, when you tend to be in isolation, because you're an introvert, a lot of introverts, I tend to be more introverted. I like being alone too. And
you are 100% an extrovert.
Everybody, you know what? People say that.
No. It's not people say that. You are. And I'll tell you,
so not.
Every conference I've been to you is miserable for me because you can go out there and you're going to talk to every little person walking by. And I'm like, dude,
well, that's because that's my skill set. That's my gifting. My spiritual gifting is extrovert. But trust me, I am I recharge and I thrive in isolation. But here's the deal. There are two things that you need to know about isolation. One is the Bible says he who isolates himself rages against all sound wisdom. And that's in context. That's not saying if you're an introvert, you're raging against wisdom. That's temperamental. What that's saying is someone who goes, I don't need anybody. I don't need the reason why is because even if you're an introvert, when the dark times come, and like the Bible says, Ecclesiastes says, for the dark times will come. The friendship is for those times.
Sure.
Where you can't. So there are two separate. I just want to be clear that being an introvert is okay.
I totally get that. I totally get that.
Proverbs is talking about. What Proverbs is talking about is there's going to come a day, and so as much of an introvert as you are, you still value friendship. In fact,
well, when my dog died, I was like, before I go back and face my kids, I need to get this out. And so I called you.
It's just a cat.
If you haven't heard the story, I'm literally crying. I can barely talk. I mean, my dog was my dog. I loved my dog, right? And so Peyton, he just saw Wind River the night before. He's like, dude, this is my moment to shine as a friend. And he starts talking about his cat, and he loved his cat. And when his cat died, he finally had to move. He's like, I can't be here in this house anymore, man. My cat died here. I gotta go. And I replied by going, yeah, but it's a cat. And we have each promised each other. To me, that is the funniest story in our entire friendship. Is that one right there? And we have promised each other, whoever dies first, the other one is sharing that story at the funeral right there.
If there was a cartoon, the cartoon would be we had both ripped our hearts out, and we're both holding our hearts out there, vulnerable and exposed. And Pete just takes my heart and just smacks it down on the ground. Yeah, but that was a cat.
Talk on friendship. It's the talk on friendship. And I'm like, let me tell you the story of how I murdered my friend's heart. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And what's funny is, a friend loves at all times, the Bible says, and a brother's born for a time of adversity. And the way that that's written, the Proverbs have all different types of structures to them. Like there's the ones that are antithetic Proverbs, where it'll say one thing and then it'll say it in the opposite way. It'll say it in a positive way, and then it'll say, and then, the wise man, but the fool, and it'll be the opposite. Those are antithetical. This one is an amplified proverb where it says something in the first section of it, and then the second half amplifies it by putting it in another way. So when it says a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for a time of adversity, what that's saying is that's what you're born for. Like, it's not just saying your physical brother. It's like saying that friend becomes like a brother and he's born for a time of adversity. That's what we're talking about today. That sense of, that's when friendship really counts. And so you might, kind of like Pete, where Pete's like, I'm an introvert, yet he still has tight friends. You need that, because when the time comes,
let's not make that plural. But he still has tight friend.
Pete has tight friend. But you need a friend. And guys, friendship is an investment in time, right? Like Pete and I would not be tight. Like we call each other up for ridiculousness. I called up and made a really stupid joke. I was laughing my butt off. Pete's like, I got to go. He didn't think it was funny. But I called him up knowing before I called him, this is the stupidest thing, but I have to laugh with Pete at this, because I had the stupidest thought come into my head and just called him up, you know, and
a friend is there, and a friend is there when another friend has to vent because he's afraid something's about ready to go down at work. And he's like, let me share my arsenal with you. These are all of my tools. This is how I'm going to combat this one. That's a good friend, man. A friend is there for that.
Yes, that is a very good friend, Pete. And that friend knows when to be quiet and say no more about said situation.
Wind River.
Death mask. So anyways, so that's the deal. So guys, it's a time investment, and you've got to make it now, because it's too late when it hits the fan and you have not been investing in friend. In Pete's case. we should just stop now. But it is a danger. Isolation in ministry is a real danger. Sometimes, like I brought up Jesus first to say, sometimes you just get in that spot where it's very difficult and you're asking for people to stand by, and they don't understand what you're going through. And clearly those disciples, they write about it. I know they wish they could go back 1,000,000 times and stay awake with Jesus. I mean, it was the night of the Passover. They'd had tons of wine. They'd eaten tons of food. It was like Thanksgiving, you know, it no excuses, but I know that they went back 1,000,000 times in their head and said, we wish we could have been a better friend to him that night. He needed us. And there's going to come a time where someone needs you, and there's going to come a time where you need them. And, you know, what I can say now, guys, is just combat that temptation in ministry to isolate or to get yourself back into a corner because you don't think you can have friends. You need friends. It's an essential survival skill.
I love you, man.
Well, you know, one thing I've found to make life a little bit easier for you is if you have a friend that can take care of all your bookkeeping, your workman's comp, your payroll, your IRS compliance, if you have that kind of a friend, you've got something special.
Absolutely. In fact, I don't even think of him as a friend. I just think of that as someone I use. SimplifiedChurch.com. They'll take care of all of your IRS compliance needs. They'll take care of all your bookkeeping, and they'll help keep an eye on the shop while it's being run.
Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball.
I'm not only the heckler president, I'm also a client.
Well, my friends, and I use that term lightly, thanks for joining us today for the Church Planter Podcast. This has been Peyton Jones and Pete Mitchell reminding you, if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.